I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube Joel Saints. That is my buddy Patrick McCray. That is my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to review Vampire Hunter D and Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. But before we do, Tony Todd sadly passed away on November 6th of this year. So we're going to hold a moment of silence for him. Please join us. Okay. Yeah, Vampire Hunter D, the original movie, the first movie was made in 1985. It was released in December, I think. This movie is very much tribute to a lot of westerns, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Shane, even when they keep saying D. And it's a drawn movie. A lot of the artwork, I think, went into the castle and the fight sequences. The drawing work's okay. It's very, Alan, you and I were talking about this, very Voltron-ish.
Yes, very much reminiscent of Voltron. That the artwork, there's a staccato feeling in some of the fights, and the background sort of blurs out during the fights sometimes. So yeah, it's very much like that. It's 80s, baby.
Yeah, I mean, in every way, they're ripping off a Blade. In a lot of ways, but
they're ripping off who?
Blade.
Blade.
Blade. Yeah,
Marvel's Blade.
Yeah, well, you have the halfling kind of guy who's half vampire, half human.
Yeah. Manga wanted to do a vampire movie in the style of Blade. But they didn't want. Obviously, they couldn't use Blade specifically, and they were thinking, well, what can we do? Well, instead of making Blade, let's make the descendant of Dracula. Oh, what happened?
I think you lost a light.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, there you
go. Yeah. Sorry, I got stuff popping up because my computer came back on.
No worries.
But they wanted something like that, and they came up with, let's make a descendant of Dracula, a vampire, half human.
Top.
Yeah, and you sort of, they get into the bounty hunter situation. That's where it's sort of a combination of for a few dollars more and fistful of dollars combined. In a weird roundabout way. On the back of this DVD, what is it? Let me have to read it. The Good, the Bad, and the Undead. It literally says on the back of the freaking DVD.
Yeah. You're obviously in tune to that idea of the homage.
Yeah, and they do this a bit in the sequel too, with Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. With this movie here, they're going all in because a lot of their story, they do the backstory correctly, with tying Dracula in. That Vampire Hunter D himself, who's half vampire, knows the history of the ancient ancestor of Dracula. That's the hint you get that, okay, there's something more to this hunter than just his looks and his. It's not just a complete Blade ripoff. That's what they're basically doing with the backstory.
He's been around an awfully long time himself. He never says quite how long he's been around, but you get the sense that he's pretty immortal himself. So
he was written in the season that John Amos's character died on Good Times. He was the replacement.
Sure. I remember when he brought the dead flowers to Florida.
And he was not scared of the Black Jesus.
No.
That JJ brought in.
No. But he didn't much care for when JJ would blurt out dynamite all the time.
Well, because that was a serious weapon.
Yes.
used against them, and that's all there is.
Yeah. There is now you've mentioned the sort of inspirations that manga used from westerns, but this actually, if you look at the design development of the character, and then you look at the Van Helsing movie,
Yeah.
you see a lot of that. The big hat, the big coat, the whole 9 yards, and he's a vampire hunter, obviously.
I also think too they also took inspiration from Solomon Kane a bit, with at least some of the look.
Sure.
Not, there's that the manga is doing a lot of different worlds with Vampire Hunter D, a lot of different inspirations. Because here's the thing, Japan was always inspired by American culture in a lot of ways, especially heavy metal. If you get into their games, a lot of the games you play that come out of Japan, you hear the music. It's very fast paced, very toned, and it's like that's heavy metal. With this, they do a really good job with drawing the fight scenes, and I do think they were smart enough to come up with D zone enemies, because they had to. I mean, they.
Well, the whole thing about this first movie is really fast paced, like you say. It's not just about the music or the fight scenes, but it's really pretty fast paced in terms of the exposition, and also, there's a lot of different things. He's encountering a lot of different obstacles. It's like like the hero's journey kind of thing is happening, but it's happening pretty quick.
And yes, the whip you see the girl carry was taken from Castlevania the game, because the Belmonts use a whip.
Mm-hmm.
So you do get that, and it's.
I tried telling you.
Yes, you did. But it's really, really, they do take a lot of stuff, and they don't. I love how this movie starts, because it doesn't start with D. It starts with the woman who the werewolf removes her cross. She then encounters the Count. She tries to fight him. There's no point to it. She gets bit, and now she's going to become a vampire, and is under the spell of a vampire in a way. And she comes across D, who she doesn't know, and she goes, "Are you a hunter?" And he doesn't answer. And then he sees, she's bit, and he goes, "When were you bitten? I'll help you." And I think that right there builds the intrigue of the character when you first meet him. They do a really good job with the voices, the American voices, and no, that is not Liam Neeson, though it sounds like him.
It's not.
But
I have a very specific set of skills.
But I do think that was on purpose, though, done on purpose, because they didn't know what to make the character sound like either.
One of the things that can be an obstacle in anime is trying to get Western cadences correctly in the dialogue and also in the story flow. I like this.
Yeah.
When we talk about the second movie does a much better job of story flow and emotional connection between certain characters and those sorts of things. So they've gotten much better at it in the 15 years since the first movie came out.
I felt that way about Legend of the Overfiend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the second movie, you have Western studio in Japan, and you have an Eastern American studio working together. It's not a small budget studio making a cult anime movie. And that's what the 80s movie was. It's just a cult anime movie that didn't have a lot of money, and they worked with what they had. That's what makes the first movie so unique, that it doesn't have quite any technology, and really I prefer more hand-drawn animation than a bunch of computers. That's why I own Studio Ghibli movies, and a lot of the early manga stuff, because I prefer the drawing and the artwork. Now, there's not a lot of great artwork necessarily with the background, that, like Alan, you pointed this out.
I think it's budget. It's budget, and how many animators can we hire? That makes a big difference.
Yeah, I do think a lot of because they show the girl's house a lot and the castle a lot. And I think a lot of the real form of the artwork went to those two places because a lot of the sequences are going to take place there.
Yes, a lot of the development, the confrontations, the outcomes of the battles, all of that sort of thing happens in and around those areas. You're right.
Yeah, and I think a lot of work too went into the monsters and the creatures. And you could tell too that with the big monster that tries to throw stuff at Dee, and then it tries to stop him from leaving the castle when he's got the girl over his shoulder. And no, Dracula isn't quite defeated quite yet.
This is where I really started to connect into Voltron because of all the row beasts in Voltron.
Yep.
Monsters that happen. So
yeah, it has a ton of touch of Voltron to it in every way. And one of the most unique creatures they had in here was that 3 women serpent creature that was really nifty looking. I do like how one of the villains lost his hand in this movie.
Well, he killed the unicorn died. The gypsies killed his unicorn, and that's led to all sorts of problems.
Dee's walking around going, "I must get that hand," because he loses his hand.
Yeah, the difference is, unlike Patofe, Dee's hand crawls back and can talk, and
it does.
I like how he's like bad mouthing. He goes, "You know what your father would have did in that situation."
Yeah. Giving him a bunch of crap.
Yeah, the hand is my favorite character.
In the second movie, they really developed the character.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that actor showed up in America and still acts in the Hamburger Helper ads.
That's right.
Yeah, and he's marvelous. He's got the mouth,
There you go. In the first one, he's like, when he gets himself back, there's this creature coming over. It's red and big. He's eating the dirt to get Dee back revived. He's like, "Wake up, you vomit!" He's hitting him on the chest as he goes, "Wake up!" Where in 2, they do develop the hand a lot better, and they have a better story for part 2 too.
Nothing is going to do a culture more good in terms of helping it make sense of the world than dropping 2 atomic bombs on them.
That's right.
Poor Japan. You look at the storytelling in Japan prior to that, and after that, and that's a real way to mess up a culture.
It is. American occupation, of course, after VJ Day had a huge amount to do with that. I was so surprised when I read my history later, and you don't get this kind of history in high school or college unless you're taking history, but that there were certain people that really went out of their way to preserve some of the heritage of the Japanese rather than completely wipe it out. Like things like the National Kabuki Theater and various other things that really needed to kind of stay. But then they gave them baseball and they went to town with it,
Well, and Nancy Reagan was a big one for supporting Japanese traditional theater with her Just Say No program.
It's true. Just say no.
Very obscure.
The confrontation between the Count and Dee is really well done.
He's so arrogant in it too. You immediately you're trying to figure out how he's going to get his comeuppance.
Yeah, and he tells the vampire's daughter, he goes, "Hey, your ancient ancestor didn't always believe in this, that human were cattle for vampire. That's not how it was." And you could tell Dee knew who his parents were and knew what they represented. And there was probably going to be, I'd like to think there would have been more of a backstory here for Dee, but again, they didn't have the budget for it. And they were really just throwing a character out into the new world to see if it would catch on.
And he
hadn't earned it yet.
Yeah, he comes off as the man with no name. It's cool. He has mystery. It works.
Yeah. It has enough history to make sense.
Yeah.
Which made sense for the movie. And you get the end of the movie where they're shouting his name, D D D, and which is a Shane reference.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah.
Maybe they just stuttered.
Hmm?
Maybe they just had a stutter.
Well,
It's like I Claudius all over again.
Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Yeah. Don't, damn it, don't.
Jules, we still have yet to do that last episode. You still
I
haven't
know,
seen the last episode of I Claudius.
Yeah, we do need to do that, don't we? Oh my God, that's right. Well, yeah, we'll have to do that sometime. Tomorrow, I'm doing I Walk with a Zombie with Butch, so we can't do it tomorrow. We
Why
can do
not?
it
You can walk with Claudius the zombie.
We can do it Sunday. We can do it
We
Sunday.
can do it Sunday.
All right.
Okay, we can
Sounds
do it
good.
I Claudius Sunday. Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust does have a bigger budget, and Meyer is a really interesting character. He's not well trusted amongst his own kind, even. But when you're dealing with a Barbaroi, they don't give a shit as long as you're paying money.
I've always said it.
So, and that's a concept I really loved about Part 2 too. You have a male woman who's a human kid who's kidnapped by a vampire. This is in a weird about way. They're sort of retelling the story without telling it of Dracula and Dee's mom in a lot of ways.
It is. She is definitely the female is definitely reminiscent of what's going on in Dracula. She's not totally in the vampire's thrall, but she's somewhat somnambulant. So
yeah, she's in love with him.
Yeah,
and that's a great too. She's in love with him without being bitten, without being under some sort of hypnotic spell.
No, it's but there's something going on there. I mean, the vampire, what they called glamoring in modern vampire lore.
Yeah. Well, Myers, they were supposed to put a little more of Myers' backstory in this movie because Dee says, "I don't trust you, Meyer." Myers' vampire mother and father were shysters. They would trick a lot of people, and so you don't get that explanation. And Meyer was pretty much the same way when he was a lot younger vampire, because I think he's supposed to be over like 400 years old.
Yeah,
they don't say that either here in this movie, so that's taken out for whatever.
Only his hairdresser knows for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, his hairdresser,
Lady Claro.
I have to step away for a moment. Keep going.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Meyer knows because of at the beginning of the movie, you see all the vampires are near, their numbers are dwindling. Meyer's ultra aware of this. He wants to get out of Dodge, but he also falls in love at the same time with this woman, and she falls in love with him. Now he's also at the same time receiving letters from this Caroline woman. Oh, I can help you. And he doesn't realize what she'll do, because he thinks, oh, she'll help him. He's being deceived. It's Caroline who hires the Barbaroi, and I love the fact that we get Mary Elizabeth McGlynn to voice a heel in this. For those who don't know, she voiced the Major in Ghost in the Shell series, and she's a hell of a voice actress and a director too. Not in this movie, but she can direct. So
the voice work is really good in this movie too. Again, the scripting is, they had much more care and time and money to sort of do scripting appropriately. There are moments between Dee and the one of the young women that has real emotional power to it. When she's talking about, if I die, bring me roses for my grave and all of this, and that kind of stuff is. And then he says, after she says, well, I don't know why I said that, blah blah blah, she says, and then he says, I'll do it, after being totally silent throughout the whole thing. And there's some, that's good screenwriting. There's some emotional impact there. So
it helps the fact you have a voice actor, I think his name is Andy something, who's voiced characters in Ghost in the Shell season 2, He voiced Kuze, and he was a voice actor for Samurai Shampoo. Really talented dude. So you have a really experienced voice actor voicing D in this movie who knows what he's doing. Too. It helps with that sort of timing. Absolutely. And it keeps within listing with the character too.
Yeah. And you get voice actors that are comfortable with this style of filmmaking and animation. It does.
Yeah. What did you think of the Barber Al?
They're sort of, it's weird because they're sort of like the pirate clan in one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, where they come upon them and they're cave dwellers. These guys aren't cave dwellers necessarily, but they kind of live in the dark, because they're vampires. And they have not only do they have mystical occult powers, but they have a cultural resonance among the vampires. They're respected, they're feared, they're this, they're that. So I saw a parallel in that. This is sort of like a cult of a subculture of vampires, very powerful, obviously, have a reputation for being incredibly dangerous, but transactional. If you come to them with a deal, they'll make a deal with you.
And it helps that they got a ton of creatures under their to use. Werewolves, witches, vampires, ghosts. They got it all.
Yeah, they're powerful. They're powerful occult beings.
It's 31 flavors of cult.
Yes.
It really, that's what's funny about it. It's like it's a bunch of mini quirks who can fight though. They all can they can all tussle. I love Dee's hand, how it sucks up the spell.
Yeah.
But you smart ass.
He sticks him in the dirt again in this movie, which kind of reinforces the idea that Dee draws a lot of power from the earth.
Yep.
Through this hand, through his.
It's Vampire Hunter D really helps explain part one a lot better too. I feel, in my opinion, because like you talked about with the earth, with him eating, he also gets sun sickness, which is why we don't see a lot of. Though it also tells you, besides the budget, why we don't see a lot of D out in the day, because he has to dig holes. The sun will make him sick.
Right.
Which made sense. It
makes sense that he's got this huge floppy hat too when he has to go out in the sun.
Yeah.
Because sometimes he has to go out in it for brief periods of time.
Yeah, and he likes to travel because he knows he has to. He's a very lonely vampire, and he's been turned away at villages, which gets talked about in part two too.
The old man tells the story about how that town kicked him out like many years before, after he cleaned out the town of vampires, and they didn't want him around.
He goes, I was one of those boys you rescued. Yeah. And the blonde-haired woman hears it.
She's sitting outside.
Yeah.
He hears the whole conversation.
I like that we get a group of brothers hunting vampires in this too.
And they're colorful. They're really colorful characters too.
Do you know who was voiced by one of the voiced one of the brothers?
No.
John DiMaggio, Bender, guy who voices Bender.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he voiced one of the brothers.
Voice of experience, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
The brothers were great. And the one brother that's like laid out on the table because he's basically he's like a spirit hunter.
Yeah.
That was cool. That was a cool reveal because you didn't know that was coming.
That was really. I was shocked by that when I first watched this.
Yeah, it's a good surprise.
Yeah, and him being like that, it's like, okay, you get all these other people being these intense vampire hunters, and they all have all this ammunition. What can a dude laying down do? It's like, holy shit.
Yeah. Definitely spiritual power. Again,
The other ones sort of have a connection to the occult, but they're also like warriors. They have weapons and they're doing all this stuff. This guy is fully into the mystic, So that's another cool element of it. Up until that point, you think, oh, these brothers, they just have weapons and a tank, and this is what they're doing. But they
Did you have a favorite character in part one?
Part one? Oh, it's I actually liked the young woman. What was her name again? Doris or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
I thought she was kind of cool, and she kind of is the catalyst for all of the stuff that goes on. Obviously, D is the central character, and he's really cool, and he does represent all those things about the more the new age of westerns, from the 70s on, that kind of stuff, 60s, some of the 60s stuff, the what I call the post John Wayne western, where things are darker and more mysterious a lot of times. So yeah, I mean, obviously he's the most interesting and compelling character, I think, overall throughout both of these movies. But I really liked her. She fell in love with him. She did this. She did that. She was a different presence, which you don't have in the second movie. She was almost a sexual presence in the first movie because she's drawn so attractively and she's menaced by men, but she can defend herself even though she's scantily clad during most of the movie. But in the second movie, the women are more chaste. They're dressed differently, more traditionally, and even the vampire hunter lady is got like an armored costume.
Yeah,
much different than that anime where they were. I mean, a lot of anime, of course, there's a sort of a fetishism with Western features and Western women and that sort of thing. So you do get some of this Playboy-esque sort of female figures. But even though that girl in the first one is sort of like that, she's got other stuff going on. She's not like just prancing around. She's part of the action. So I thought that was kind of fascinating.
Yeah, they make a female hero in the first one, and she's not like trying to give away her body in a sense.
No. She's just drawn that way.
Yeah, she's drawn that. Yeah. And they do a really good job of making her stand up for herself, even against other people too.
She does.
Which makes her character even more appealing. In the second one, you're right. We don't have that so much sexuality in a sense, but we do get strong female characters like the girl, the blonde hair girl. And I really, again, I'll give credit to Mary Elizabeth McGlynn for playing the heel in Caroline. Like what a cutthroat bitch! Like,
seriously, yeah. She plays the yin to the other girl's yang. I mean, she's the profane to the sacred in terms of the feminine. If you want to get into that kind of mysticism or that kind of I don't want to say fairy tales, but it's kind of like that from ancient stories. The word is escaping me, but anyway, mysticism is a fine word for it. Mythology is the word that I'm looking for. There is a sacred feminine, and sometimes there's a profane feminine, just like there is male and female, male the same way. And like if you want to break it down to wrestling terminology, it's face and heel. It's that.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite character in part two?
It's D all the way, I think, for me. Yeah. I think they start to develop him more in this movie. So you see a little bit more about him. He's still always going to have an air of mystery about him because that's who he is. But you learn more about him. You learn a bit more about him as he goes on. And you also learn about some of his motivations.
I think too, the hand helps out with that too.
Oh, absolutely. The hand is fabulous. The hand is hilarious in the second movie. Gets a chance to really kind of strut his stuff, so to speak, as a character.
I like all the other characters we get in this movie too. Meyer is a really interesting character.
Absolutely.
Though they didn't put his backstory in, they still make the character work. The female bounty hunter was really interesting, and the brothers were fun to watch. 2 has a lot more variety of characters too, because again, they had the budget too.
Right. So you see more.
When they do a third film of this, and they're supposed to sometime. I hope we see more interesting characters.
Yeah, and more development of those that we've already come to know. So that's always good.
Yeah. That's the thing. I don't think certain anime products work as a series. Like I don't think Vampire Hunter D would work as a series.
Right. As a series of films, yeah, you can do, because you can just have standalone stories, and then, like you say, depending on the budget, you can expand on the characters themselves.
Absolutely. I think too with like I keep seeing stuff get rebooted all the time with like the anime. Like Ghost in the Shell was on its third reboot, it feels like. And it's like, okay, if you're going to keep doing this, don't keep going back to the same well. Make new characters, right?
Yeah, I think the reason that they get away with that, at least at first, is because they're going after another generation, of anime enthusiasts who maybe, they didn't get the first one, or if they did, they want more of that or whatever. They're just being exposed to that stuff. But you're right. Things should evolve, I guess. And there should be continuity.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's the thing. The first story's been retold a bunch of times. They've had a sequel to the first movie too. The first two seasons on Ghost in Shell Standalone Complex are good. Solid State Society's good. The Netflix stuff, it's okay. It's not great. Let's see, I'm trying to think of the other one that was the one that the prequel stuff they did. The first one's okay, the second one isn't. It's like, so they've had their storytelling done. They just need to move forward and not look back. With D, I guess my recommendation would just be develop characters who are interesting and hopefully have the budget to do that.
Yes.
I don't know if Andy, the character, the actor still alive who voiced him in this movie, I'd like to see him come back if he could. I wouldn't want to hear him come back. So, what do you give these movies?
I think now that they've gone bigger budget, I don't think they can go back on that either. I think they'll have to at least maintain the budget in order to maintain the quality that they've decided to do since 2000. Because it's really good. I mean, it's quite a leap forward. So
it is. What do you give these movies, Alan?
I really like the second one in terms of style, development, story, all of that stuff. So I would give the second one probably, for this type of stuff, a good 9. I'd give the first one somewhere between 7.5 and an 8, because I was just sort of trying to get into it, find my way in. So,
yeah, our scores are close. Mine's a 7 out of 10 for the first one. It's good. It still holds up for what it is. And yeah, the second one's a 10. It's perfect, pretty much. It's just really, really good. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, this is great. This is a great entry into this world again. It's been a number of years since I've actually done any sort of anime film, and doing feature film is a good way to get back into it. So,
yeah, there's a ton of stuff out there that you can go watch.
Yeah, my students keep telling me about stuff, and I just haven't had the time to look at it yet. But yeah, I have an intention to do so. So.
It's okay. Like, here's the thing with anime. Anime does this too. Like Dragon Ball's rebooted itself a bunch of times too.
Of course.
So it'll be interesting to see like what new product, because some of the newer products that have weird names, but they're good, they're okay. So it's it's like, all right, I'll check it out. As long as it's not on Netflix. Don't like animation. I'm sorry.
No, there's a streaming service just for anime, isn't there? Out there somewhere?
I don't know. I know that. Well, I know Adult Swim used to do a ton of animation. I don't know if this.
I have to ask my students because I think somebody referred to it once and I just didn't get it. So
yeah.
I think there's one that's more attuned to anime that might be a better fit than, like you say, Netflix. They're just trying to sort of just be in it, you know, in some way, and it's not necessarily the best stuff. So
yeah, there's a lot of good animation out there, like from the 80s and 90s.
And
There's stuff from the 70s that are still good, that was good. I mean, so
what, Speed Racer goes back to the late 60s. I mean,
yeah,
goes back a ways. So,
yeah, Speed Racer was pretty good. Yeah, it was really good. I remember watching that in syndication.
Yeah.
Good shit.
That's probably one of the oldest ones that were exported anyway. So
yeah,
it goes back there. I was a kid when that first came out.
Yeah, there you go.
And I've not been a kid for some time now.
Yeah. Link to Alan Gallant's YouTube channel, Collins Port After Dark. Go subscribe to it. If you don't, the Hand of Potofi will find you. We will leave a link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows They Book About. We're sorry Patrick didn't get a chance to watch the two movies. So he saw 20 minutes of it.
He did.
So shout out to him. So good night. I'll see you Sunday, Alan.
Okay.
Peace.